Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to look at Rayan Cherki in more detail, go through the player, his skill set, what we've seen whilst he was away at Lyon last season, in particular being the best creator in France, as well as being one of the best creators across Europe, despite not playing as many games as the other players that would be listed above him. Some of the concerns that people have mentioned about him out of possession, his work rate, his attitude, etc. Go through what we've seen at the Club World Cup and have a look at what our expectations would be for the coming season. Now, it is worth mentioning, and this is a great graphic by Scouted. If you aren't a follower of them, then I do recommend checking out their newsletter. This is from one of their articles when they were looking at the kind of physical differences between different leagues. Obviously, you can see the Premier League right up here when it comes to sprinting distance, really significantly far away from other leagues. Somehow, the Czech League is out here as a bit of an outlier. But you're looking at the high-speed running and the combination of sprinting, the sprinting aspects where the Premier League really is above everywhere else. Then when you're looking for the leagues that are similar, so you're looking to maintain the same amount of high-speed running, and then the next closest team when it comes to sprinting, there's no surprise that you'll see the league in France that comes up, the league where Cherki did play last season, so that's a positive sign. The Championship, which has been spoken about quite recently about being a great league for recruiting for Premier League teams. We've seen that across the Premier League teams further down the table that recruit well from those teams in the Championship. And then when you're looking at other leagues that people do talk about within Europe as being some of the most competitive, obviously physically is not going to be comparable as much to the Premier League. So you're looking at Serie A in Italy, you're looking at La Liga in Spain. The volume of sprinting, much less. The amount of high-speed running, much less as well. One of the positive things, and this is part of what the article points out with Scouted, is that when you're looking at Sverre Nipan, that's just been recruited for Manchester City and is expected to link up with the team in pre-season, then go out on loan. You look at the Elite Serien, which is the league in Norway, doing very well for high-speed running. So I think that's quite a positive sign. You're recruiting a player from that league. Physically, you're looking at some good metrics there. And then obviously wanting to adapt when he goes out on loan. Versus if you're picking up a player that's coming from the Eredivisie in the Netherlands, that's a common kind of thing to question when you're looking at the player from the Netherlands is how well are they doing physically, given that the league, when we're looking at high-speed running and sprinting, doesn't rank particularly close to the league that they would eventually be playing in the Premier League. So you will get players like Weifer that's moved to Brighton. You look at how he's handled it physically, doesn't look as well suited to the Premier League. But then you can also get players like Urian Timber that look at home in the Premier League. So different leagues come with their kind of like different characteristics, and physically that's something to bear in mind when you're looking at players moving to the Premier League. And that's a bit of a long-winded way of kind of saying, when you think about Cherki moving from France to play in the Premier League, it's very positive that he's coming from that league. When people are talking about concerns about whether he can match up to the kind of physical differences, the athleticism demands of the Premier League, well, he's coming from arguably the best league as a stepping stone into the Premier League in terms of the physical aspect. So that's just something to bear in mind. One of the stats I did see when you're looking at Cherki last season, final third pressures 17.7 per 90 versus Jeremy Doku 19.3, Savinho 19. Not really that far away. You're looking at regains per 90 across the pitch, 3.7 for Cherki, Jeremy Doku 4 per 90, and then Savinho 3.8. So in both of those two metrics there, you're not looking at this huge gap that people talk about in terms of their work rate out of possession between those two players. And then another thing to bear in mind that I spoke about with Alex Barker on a 9320 podcast is that Cherki's never had a coach that's been very good at coaching teams how to press high up the pitch and play in a high press. So you're not, when you look at Florian Wirtz as just an example, he's coming from Xavi Alonso, very, very good coach, presses high up the pitch effectively, and Florian Wirtz has been coached within that, as well as obviously his kind of physical differences. There's no denying that physically he is very, very good, and that's one of the reasons he went for such a high price tag. But when you're looking at the experience he's had as by who his coaches are, Cherki just hasn't had that whereas he will get that when he moved to Manchester City. And as we saw in the Club World Cup, I don't really think there's anything to be concerned about with his effort level, and that he can be effective in pressing. The question marks really remain on what role does Guardiola want to play him in, and to be able to get the best out of him when he is further forward as part of the first line of the press. That's where the question marks remain, and we'll get onto that a little bit later in the video. If we just move to this one here, this open play touches from last season for Cherki at Lyon, 24-25. When you're looking, majority of touches coming on this right wing, then moving into the half space, moving in between the lines centrally. So he's somebody that really does pick up the ball out wide on the right hand side, coming deep as well a fair few times, to be able to collect the ball and be his use in the build up, dribble past players, etc. And then is given the freedom to move inside. As we'll get onto a bit later in the video, when we looked at him in the Club World Cup, this is somebody that predominantly was operating in that tournament in the middle, and really is a player that you're going to get the very best out of him when he has that freedom to move inside, move centrally, and find out pockets of space. Similar to how De Bruyne was not really ever tied to being somebody that operated out wide, yet he was very effective in wide areas with his crossing ability and the chances he would create. It's more so that you give that player the freedom to find the pockets of space, to probe the opposition and their box, and find out where the solutions are to be able to affect the game. And that is something for Cherki when we get to next season. You'll want to see where he does pop up. Obviously, if you look into a bit more detail with some of these, you'll notice that in the half spaces on either side, there's a lot of touches in there, as he wants to be able to operate in both of them. If you're going to confine him to when he's playing on the right wing, then you're going to lose out on everything that goes on here from Cherki. If we move over to this one here, this is open play chance creation by him last season, and as we mentioned with the touches, we're talking about where his chances come from open play. Well, it's no surprise that they're all coming from central areas. Last season with Lyon, he has that freedom to move inside. When it comes to Manchester City, you want to be able to start him with that freedom straight away, and then find out what's the best role for him at possession. But when we do have the ball, you want to get him in the central spaces. And it speaks more to looking at when it comes to next season. You think about Phil Foden and Cherki playing together as double tens, or you're playing Cherki in the middle by himself. These are the kind of positions you want to get him in, so we can find a pocket of space around the box to be able to create. Line breaking passes. I mentioned in the video about Tijani Reinders that he's very effective at these line breaking passes. We'll get onto this a little bit when we get to the Club World Cup data that shows that Cherki is very effective when it comes to breaking the last line of the opposition block. Showed that across last season in League One for Lyon, being able to get the ball into the box and break the defensive line. And another aspect is his chance creating carry. So you look at him able to carry the ball and create a chance, carry the ball and get a shot off, and be able to score as well, all the way around the box. Not somebody that's looking for a certain pocket, a certain side of the box that he's really effective. You think about Jeremy Doku is somebody that in these kind of positions is very effective at carrying into the box, whereas Cherki moves all the way across and is looking to be able to find space to be able to penetrate the box. Another skill very effective. You look at Omar Marmoush, who came in recently, somebody as well that's very good at carrying the ball and creating a chance and getting a shot off. Tijani Reinders is another one, great in the final third, carrying the ball, being able to get a shot off or create a chance. So when you're looking ahead to next season, along with Cherki, you've got a lot of players now that are going to be very creative when they dribble with the ball in the final third. Here is just a selection of assists from Cherki. So throughout the video I mentioned about open play, but this is one of his corners, able with both feet to take from either side of the box. Number of his crosses on the right hand side in the box, able to cross the back post. Erling Haaland, this is the kind of position he likes to be in to receive the ball from De Bruyne, whether it is more inside the box or outside of it, as you'd expect from De Bruyne more regularly. So you've already got somebody there coming in that's able to provide those crosses that Erling Haaland will like now that De Bruyne is departed, as well as having Aït-Nouri on the other side being able to whip crosses in. And then you also got the kind of dink balls in, the reverse balls, through balls into the box, etc. There's a real variety to his game, and as we just move on to this one, from a set piece, chipping the ball over the top. Crosses that I mentioned from that right hand side, he's very good at finding the runner going towards the back post. You think about what we saw from Jeremy Doku at the Club World Cup, attacking that back post very, very well. This is the kind of person that Cherki will be able to pick out alongside Erling Haaland coming more centrally. If you're going to get more runners into the box, as you can see down here, through ball and another cross from the right hand side of the box. So see a lot of encouraging signs from Cherki across his time at Lyon, the variety to his game in terms of the chances he can create. I think one thing that we didn't see as much from him when it comes to his last season in France was the consistency in terms of being a scorer, somebody that looks to really kind of place the ball, whereas he can actually really lace it. And then when you were looking at him play for France, when he got his first call up coming on against Spain, somebody that's able to volley the ball and drive it into the goal from the edge of the box. You look at his goal, we'll get onto a little bit later, at the Club World Cup, driving it from the edge of the box. So this is not just somebody that is stuck to having to place the ball really well into the goal. He can put his laces through the ball, and that's something you'd want to see more and more of as he moves to Manchester City, as well as all the stuff that he can do as a creative force for the team. If we move to the Club World Cup now, so this is the 4 touch maps for Cherki across the 4 Club World Cup games. Against Wydad on the left top corner, Al Ain over there on this side, Juventus down on the bottom left corner, and then Al Hilal on the bottom right corner. And as you can see for all of these, as I mentioned at the start of the video when we were looking at the touches, for Cherki playing for Lyon, we want to get this guy playing in the pockets, and that's exactly what we're seeing for Manchester City, be it from a start, be it off the bench. He's looking to find himself in pockets of space. You've got the 2 half spaces over here, in this pocket over on this side against Al Ain. Juventus over on this side, drifts out wide a little bit more in this game. But you're getting him into these central positions, and that will be the focus for Manchester City when it comes to next season, is finding him in these spaces consistently, where he's able to affect the game in the final third. You think about some of the goals that he will be able to be a part of, whether it is somebody that's able to link up and take shots in and around the box, somebody that's able to pick out the runs of Erling Haaland and Marmoush, somebody that's able to link up with Phil Foden, who is as much as a shooter as he is a runner into the box itself. So you've got a lot of players in and around Cherki that he'll be able to combine with, as well as having the likes of Jeremy Doku and Savinho. You think about Oscar Bob. So there's lots of players there in the final third he will be able to play 1-2s with. Lots of players that will be able to make the runs for him to be able to pick out, whether it is a cross, whether it's through ball, etc. But particularly getting him into these pockets is going to be the task for next season. And then for the opposition, that's the kind of place you want to be able to stop the ball getting into Cherki. You want to stop him from affecting the game in those positions. And then something that's really quite encouraging from him, as we mentioned at the start of the video, with his ability to carry the ball and create chances, is he is somebody that will search for the pockets of space, and if you limit him centrally, he will move out wide to be able to pick up the ball and still be able to affect the game. He's not going to be stuck centrally, man marked, and then is out of the game for the rest of that Champions League knockout game that you desperately need to win. Cherki is somebody that will look for the ball, whether it's to come deep, whether it's to move out wide, so he can get on the ball and make a difference in the game. This is one of the goal we scored against Al Ain. So City win the ball high up the pitch. Cherki plays this dummy, ball goes straight into Erling Haaland, plays the ball right out to him, and then he puts his foot through it on the edge of the box over into the bottom corner. The goal he scored in the Club World Cup. That kind of moment of magic, that's what Cherki was able to show, not only in his debut for France and then into these different games for Manchester City in the Club World Cup, despite being knocked out eventually against Al Hilal. You also saw this pass over the top for Phil Foden, as I mentioned, somebody that is as much a shooter as he is a runner into the box. This run from Foden down to the back post, Cherki picks out with this ball over top, reminiscent of something you see from Kevin De Bruyne, to the likes of Erling Haaland. So I think regardless of whether it's Foden or another player, to see this kind of ball being able to being played by Cherki is very encouraging when it comes to next season, and it's something that you can really look forward to when it comes to talking about, does Manchester City lack creativity in the final third? Well, you're adding somebody in like Cherki, You're adding in more passers with Rodri, with Reinders. You've got more willing runners in the likes of Marmoush and now what Doku's shown in the tournament, Erling Haaland already. There's just lots to be excited about that are already around Cherki, rather than us looking at him coming in as a player, and he looks very impressive, but then you're struggling to see the pieces around him that will be able to support him, when in fact he's arriving now into a team that does have all of those pieces in front of him to be able to pick out. We move to line breaking passes. Again, limited sample size, as I mentioned throughout this video, when it comes to the Club World Cup. But we can see the quality in those moments that we've just gone through in the goal and assist. This is line breaking passes around the opposition block, through it, and over the top. And in particular, when we're looking at Cherki, you see the high volume of line breaking passes he attempts. You see a lot of them around somebody that will drop deep and play the ball around. But then you've also got 6.4 for playing through the lines. You've got 4.3 for playing over the top. That's something that really does separate him from some of the other players on this list. Now, it's expected for Rodri and Nico to play these kind of balls when they're deeper in midfield as that number 6. And then you're adding Cherki that's also able to play those sort of passes. Real variety to his game. If we look at the line breaking passes attempted that broke the first opposition line, the second, and then the last, the defensive line, it will jump out to you that Cherki is gotten 5 here for breaking the defensive line. I mentioned at the start of the video, when it comes to his performance at Lyon, breaking the defensive line in and around the box is a real strength of his. You're adding that De Bruyne would have gave them the team and has now since departed. Cherki's able to add that back into the team straight away. Reinder's more somebody that's able to play through into the box, whereas Cherki, as we saw with the assist, will look to play balls over the top. So again, as I'm touching on the rest of the team, you're looking at all the different options around Cherki, as well as all the other options that within the team, all the different skill sets they're bringing. Cherki adds a real crucial one when it comes to the final third, breaking the defensive line, being able to play balls over the top to our runners, to the back post, etc. Is going to be very useful when it comes to next season. Whether that's going to be somebody coming off the bench that's able to make these kind of moments of magic happen, or somebody that's going to be starting games week in, week out, whether it be out wide or centrally. Now, this is just one on the movement to receive the ball. I just wanted to pull up Phil Foden versus Cherki, and as you'll notice straight away, so this is a percentage rather than the volume of their runs. Phil Foden makes a lot of movement between the lines, much more so than Cherki does, with his 24.1. And then what you'll see from Cherki is more no movement, so he's stood waiting for the ball, hands out to receive it, and then he's looking to turn and play it. Somebody that's moved out the opposition block, find himself in space, and then is waiting to receive that ball. You see a lot of him making more runs in behind in comparison to Phil Foden, so 9.7 versus 18.6 here. You'll also see Phil Foden, so you've got into-out runs where Cherki is inside the opposition block and then is pulled out wide to receive the ball. You see some of them there, whereas with Phil Foden, you'll see him 4.9 on both into-out runs as well as out-to-in, so he'll start out wide, move himself into the opposition block between the lines and then receive the ball. So that just shows you a little bit of the difference between the two players with their movement off the ball to be able to receive it, the runs that they'll make. And the kind of low percentage or no movement speaks more to the fact that Phil Foden is just that type of player that's always on the move, always looking for space, always demanding the ball and in motion. And last season we saw less and less of that on the ball, as well as we did see with his movement off the ball when it comes to pressing and defensively. So he just didn't move as well last season. For whatever reason, he went through struggles last season, but in the Club World Cup we saw that improvement. And this is just some of the differences between Cherki and Foden from what we saw in the Club World Cup, bearing in mind that is a bit of a small sample size. This is pressing metrics, and I mentioned at the start of the video there was that kind of talk about how much Cherki will work out possession. Well, he's in the top 3, as I've highlighted in green, for pressing indirectly, 29.3 per 90 minutes, up there with the likes of Oscar Bob, Erling Haaland. So that's a really good sign. Pressing directly, that's something that he'll want to work on now. Playing in the front line, little bit more difficult to be able to do. But that is something that you'll want to see an improvement from him, and that will just come from, as I mentioned, being coached by Pep Guardiola, the other assistant coaches, being in a team that presses high up the pitch, getting games, getting training sessions under your belt, and being in the team that does function well then when they are pressing high up the pitch. Obviously, City as a team has a lot to work on in that regard. But yeah, something to keep an eye on from Cherki. You then move over to pushing on, which is about closing the distance between you and the opposition player that doesn't have the ball. He's on 20 per 90 Cherki here. That's in line with Phil Foden. That's not far off Bernardo Silva, which is one of the top ones here. Not far off the likes of Echeverri and Oscar Bob, that again were the part of the top 3 for this metric. So when it comes to his work rate off the ball, pressing directly is something to work on, but in terms of closing the distance between him and opposition players, the indirect pressing on players that don't have possession of the ball, he's doing very well in these metrics in the Club World Cup. There was a lot of moments, like you think about the game against Wydad, pressing the opposition player that leads to the ball being recovered by Jeremy Doku, who has a shot that misses. If that goes in and he scores from that position, Jeremy Doku, then that's a goal built on the fact that Cherki did his job to be able to press the opposition players and the goalkeeper high at the pitch. So there's definitely signs to be positive about him. Our possession, as I mentioned at the very start of the video, it's about seeing what role he's going to play for Manchester City. We saw him start a game in a setup that we're probably not going to see, and definitely an 11 we're not going to see really at all throughout the season. Phil Foden playing in a double pivot, I don't think so. But a lot of his other appearances are obviously off the bench, so we're not seeing him start games in a setup pressing the opposition where we can understand properly what role does Pep Guardiola see him playing in, and that's something we'll find out when it gets to the next season. But when it just comes to the physical data, when it comes to the pressing aspect, from what we've seen in the Club World Cup, I don't think there should really be any concerns about the player putting in the right amount of work for a Manchester City team. And then this is some of the physical data pulled from the Club World Cup. You look at Cherki here, distance covered per 90, not far off Phil Foden with 11.72 kilometres per 90. You look at high speed runs, 148.6 runs per 90 in zone 3, so Cherki's part of the top 3 for high speed runs in zone 3. You look at sprints as well, 61.4, part of the top 3, which is zone 4, zone 5. So as I mentioned, I don't think there's anything to be concerned about physically with Cherki. I don't think there's concerns to be have that he doesn't have the right intent when it comes to pressing off the ball and wants to succeed and wants to contribute to the team in this regard. It's more so waiting to see what is the role that Guardiola comes up for him in the team out of possession, and seeing how well he learns that role, which is going to be quite telling over the course of the season. Because when it comes to the effort level, the intent is there, the creative influence that he can have on the team. We saw that throughout last season with Lyon. We saw glimpses of that at the Club World Cup, as well as those kind of moments of magic that Cherki is able to put together within a game. So there's a lot of areas to be really positive about. It's just when it comes to next season, as I've mentioned many times throughout this video, it's finding the right role for him in the team. You want to get him in the pockets in central spaces, and then out of possession you want to find the right role for Cherki, as we'll wait and see what Guardiola comes up with. But the effort there is there, the intent is there, and as we've seen from many interviews and the quotes that have been going around online, this is a player coming in with a serious mentality that wants to succeed, that wants to do well, that wants to be that superstar at Manchester City. When you look at De Bruyne retiring and you see the send-off that he gets, some players are there thinking, wow, congratulations, etc. Some players like Cherki are looking at that thinking, I want to have that kind of impact at this club, and that's the sense you get from Cherki in every kind of interview that he does do. The attitude he showed in some of the games for Lyon, in European games, the way he played against Man United as well. Very, very encouraging, as well as his debut for France, to come in those conditions and just single-handedly change a game against one of the best international teams around at the moment as well. Speaks volumes about his character. So yeah, very, very exciting player. Very encouraging signs from the Club World Cup, as I mentioned throughout this video. If there's anything you feel like I've missed out and not explained well, something you wanted me to talk about, questions you had, etc., Let me know down below in the comments and I'll jump in and reply to you. If there's something you want to see me cover in a future video, again, let me know down below and I'll have a look and put together a video on those different topics. Otherwise, please make sure you like the video to support the channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video, and we'll be back with plenty more content this week.